Hi, this is Ken Adams, and welcome to this edition of the Valley View. And I'm joined with City Councilman-elect Tom Andersen, who
Hi.
is from Ward 2.
Correct.
And you haven't actually started on the City Council yet.
Well, I'm telling you, Ken, it feels like I've started because since maybe July, I've been going to orientation sessions for incoming city councilors, because this year, all 4 of the newly elected councilors are brand new. So we've gone to all departments. We've had meetings with the city manager's office, with the city attorney. We've been to the police, the fire, urban development, public works. We spent some time at the IT, which is right upstairs from the studio here.
Oh, okay.
So, and they've been very, very helpful. You know, a lot of it is stuff that I already knew from my work in the neighborhood groups and from just being an attorney and understanding those things. But they were all very helpful, and I was glad that the city manager and the mayor started that. And usually at every meeting, the mayor comes when she can, and so does the city manager, and it's been a very helpful process. Plus, I'm getting at my request, I'm getting the city council packet, the same council that the city, the same packet that the councilors get, so I could look at things. I'm also I've been going to various neighborhood group meetings. I think I've been to each neighborhood group in my ward since I got elected. And I've been to a lot of the different planning meetings. There's Cessna and Nen, Southeast Salem Neighbors.
And Northeast.
Yes, Southeast, Northeast. They've got a planning tool that is happening. I've been going to that. And I have to tell you, I'm already getting lobbied by people on various things.
I would suspect so,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And that's fine. That's part of the job. Of course, I tell them I can't do anything. Some people wrongly assume that since I won the election in May, I'm already on a city councilor.
Well, it does seem rather remote history when we talk about the election last May. We've had another election since then, and you're still not actually sitting on the city council.
No, and the way it goes is in the May primary, if someone gets in a nonpartisan race, which this is, and normally it's just the city councilor positions and the judge, circuit court and the municipal judge, in nonpartisan races, if someone gets in the primary more than 50%, they're the only name on the ballot. And I was a part of a 3-person race, and normally on the primary, and normally what happens there is nobody gets 50%, so the top 2 run off in November, and I got 52.5%.
So we didn't have to go through that.
No, I didn't have to campaign. I was the only name on the ballot. My wife and I went to Italy for about 3 weeks in October instead of pounding the doorsteps.
And that was probably a lot more relaxing, gearing up for.
I would say that it was. I would say that it was. But I'll tell you, I actually missed the day-to-day contact with people. And I went out nearly every night or weekend day from early February to the day before the election, with the exception of 3 weeks when I happened to be in Bhutan on a long-planned business trip. I would guess that I visited between 700 and 800 houses. And I enjoyed the contact with the people. I like to talk about the issues, and it was a fun thing.
Well, you know, I think one of the things that's kind of missing these days is that civic involvement. And if you're talking to people in their homes, you can probably make them understand the importance of city council in elections that are held, and what the job is afterwards, because there's a lot that goes into it that affects us on a day-to-day basis, whereas state and national politicians can have some effect, but it's more remote.
Well, I think it was Tip O'Neill, who was the former Speaker of the House
yes, it was.
From Massachusetts. He said, all politics is local, and this is local. I mean, you can't get much more local than a city council. And I will also tell you that at least twice when I was there, I got people who said to me, I've lived in my house for 30 years, and you're the first candidate for any political office that has come to see me. And you know, that was kind of telling to me, and I use that time and every other time on my doorstep conversations, and a lot of times they invited me into their living rooms.
Right.
I could educate them about things. The third bridge is a good example of how I could educate people.
Well, why don't we talk about the third bridge, because I think that is a very important issue.
Oh,
because
big time.
it's almost like cross purposes, because I don't know if we really, my opinion is we don't really need a third bridge, and no one's made a good case for why we do need it. Because one of the things that I think about is with climate change, it's going to change how we get around. Sooner or later, it's going to change how we do things, because it's also coupled with cheap fuel.
Yeah.
And so when we're looking at the infrastructure, do we really need something like that over a 30-year period? Plus, we still haven't done anything. If you spend $500 million or whatever on a third bridge, you still haven't done anything about the two bridges you have that need improved safety.
Well, getting to your point about climate change and how it's going to affect people's driving patterns have already changed.
That's right.
There was just a study that came out from Washington Department of Transportation that showed that in the state of Washington, people's driving they thought it was going to be going up by a certain percentage, and in fact, it had gone down by 25%. And we see the same thing here locally. All politics is local, in the trips across the bridge. On a graph, the population of West Salem since 2000 has been going up like this, but the trips across the bridge are staying steady. In other words, there's been no increase in the trips across the bridge, even with that much larger population there. So what we really need to do is fix the bridges we have. A new bridge like that is not going to, it's going to waste a whole lot of money. It's not even going to address the problem, which is getting from West Salem to downtown and vice versa for maybe 20 minutes or half an hour a day. And interestingly enough, the current rendition of the bridge, which is really no longer the Salem alternative, it's basically a freeway. And at least 3 counselors in the public meetings have not been pleased with this. At the last work session, both Councilor Dickey, who represents Ward 5, which is northeast Salem, Councilor Tessler, who is in Ward 2, the current holder of my ward, and Councilor Bennett, who represents actually Ward 1, is both sides of the river now.
And downtown.
Yeah. And Bennett said it was like putting lipstick on a pig. He said he was very disappointed because what had started out to be a small, I put McCain air quotes small, a small project to help Salem is now a big regional project that is helping everybody else, and there's absolutely no identified way to pay for it. In fact, I just was reading today that almost $7 million has been spent in planning, and the vast majority of that, I want to say maybe $6.5 million, has gone to CH2M Hill, which is a former Oregon company that's now headquartered in Colorado for their planning studies. And that $7 million, Ken, would have paid for about half of the earthquake retrofitting of one of the bridges.
So it's been kind of a boondoggle in a sense already before it's even built.
Yeah, and this is just a fact of life that most any construction project usually ends up costing more in private or public sector, costing more than you think it was, and this is going to cost more. In my visits to 700 to 800 homes, I would say I could count the people on less than one hand who said, I think this is a good idea. And of those people, once I explained to them, Ken, that it's not addressing the problem of Salem getting to Salem, it's addressing a regional problem, but it's going to be paid for by the people of Salem if there's any way to pay it. Once I explained the facts to them, and this gets back to your point about education, once I said that to them, they were like, well, I don't know if I'm for that.
Right, because we'll be paying for something that we won't really be getting as much use out of.
No.
The state isn't, as far as I can tell, the state or the feds aren't going to apply any funds to this.
In fact, the state has a list of bridge projects to retrofit them for earthquake proofing.
Right.
If no other source of funding is found, the 2 Salem bridges are supposed to be retrofitted 15 and 20 years out. And we need them now.
Right.
And that's where our money should be going, and our energy and our efforts should be going, instead of another version of the bridge to nowhere, a bridge that will be obsolete before it's built.
Yes, and I think also, and I'm not an expert on this, but to me, it's going to create bigger traffic problems in West Salem.
Yeah.
Because now you're going to have all this traffic flowing through downtown West Salem, or the main, and that, whenever I've been over there, that isn't usually, they seem to have enough traffic now.
Yeah, well, and there's a whole, when it crosses the river on the west side there's going to be a whole new iteration of Marine Drive, which is just a little tiny thing now that goes along the Wallace Marine Park, and it's going to be a 4-lane freeway basically. Edgewater Street on West Salem, depending on which version of the plan you look at, may be facing an elevated highway from Eola Road all the way to downtown. And to me, that's not a good way you want your city to look.
Well, not only that, but it's going to kind of cut off neighborhoods.
Oh, big time, big time. As an example, you can look at is the Mission Street overpass there, which is a good idea and was needed, and it really helps the traffic flow. But you go under that Mission Street bridge on the 13th or 14th, I think it is, where it comes under there. That area, needs some help. And you look at that and think, this is what's going to happen on Pine Street in North Salem. This is what's going to happen on the other side where the bridge goes over Marine Drive. There are at least 2 neighborhoods there that they're going to be very surprised to see traffic in their backyard, basically.
Well, I'm glad you're going to be on the city council talking about these things, because I don't see it brought up.
No.
And so I think it's something that really needs to be brought up. The other thing that I guess I go down Mission Street a lot, and the School for the Blind, Howard Hall, is still standing. To me, it's a beautiful park right now.
Yeah.
And they're talking about cutting down most of those trees and putting in a parking lot, which to me seems very short-sighted.
Well, if you look at the grounds around the hospital, there's a lot. I won't say there's plenty, but there is a lot of parking on that around the hospital grounds. A lot of surface parking, and some of the listeners or watchers, excuse me, may recall that there used to be a lovely old school there, Bush's School, or Bush School, I think it was, right on Mission, just east of where the hospital is now, and that was torn down, I think, 2005. And now there's a surface parking lot there.
With one tree.
With one tree. And, and I know that the neighborhood group has appealed. There's 2 kind of parallel processes going on now with Howard Hall. One is the ability to demolish Howard Hall, which the hospital first had to go to the Historic Landmarks Commission, which is composed of people with expertise in these sort of things.
Right.
They voted unanimously that the hospital had not made their case. The hospital then, well, actually the hospital didn't appeal. City Council called it up, meaning the hospital didn't even have to appeal, because the city council said, we'll do it for you. And the City Council voted unanimously to allow them to do it. So they didn't rely on the expertise of the people who they appointed to make these kind of decisions, but they totally 180-degree reversal from what the Historic Landmarks Commission had said. And an 84-year-old blind woman has appealed, and that's in front of LUBA.
And LUBA is? The
Land Use Board of Appeals. And we'll see. What normally happens in LUBA is that they often find there was some flaw in the process, as opposed to some flaw in the ultimate decision. And so what oftentimes happens is they remand, which is a legal word for send it back, down to the council and say, you were wrong in steps 3 and 5 of a 7-step process. That's hypothetical.
Right.
And then so the council would go back and fix step 3 and step 5.
But try to come up with the same decision.
Exactly right. then the other parallel track is there's been, and I may not be technical enough, it was a variance or some sort of permit that allowed approved the plans for the site there that the hospital has, which included taking down a bunch of majestic old white oaks. And that's been appealed by the neighborhood group, not by the person who went to the school.
More concerned with Howard Hall.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just not oaks. There's some really large trees, period. I mean, they've been there a long, long time.
Yeah.
And also, recently, I guess it was discovered that there's some native squirrels that live in that area.
Well,
and there's also, I believe it was a nuthatch or some bird that is also
maybe the Salem version of the spotted owl. Who knows?
Well, could be. But I mean, it still is. To me, it's a wonder. I mean, I love seeing it because they're big, beautiful trees.
Yeah.
And you know, I tell people when I go to the doctor's office, if they take my blood pressure in a little room with no windows, my blood pressure, they have to recheck it.
Yeah.
But whenever they check me in a room where I can see out and there's trees, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I think, so there's a health benefit to leaving those trees, I think, for a lot of folks.
Well, you know, obviously the administrative and legal process has happened. And, you know, the hospital has the ability to do what it wants to do, you know, pending the two appeals of the two things. And, you know, if I had to call it, I'd say the odds are against the people appealing. That is, against the people appealing Howard Hall, against the neighborhood group appealing the permit to cut down the trees and site plan approval. But, you know, I think there are other ways to talk to the hospital as being a member of the community, and I know some of those areas are being approached, both with the friends of trees, shall we say, and friends of squirrels and nuthatches.
Right.
You know, and I will have to say, as far as you know, as speaking in the hospital's defense, they have always been very open and cooperative and transparent in what they wanted to do. And, you know, we as a neighborhood group met with them countless times, and we presented a proposal of 6 things that we wanted to see in the development. And one of them was Howard Hall. And so setting that aside, of the other 5, they've all been, especially 4 of them, have been pretty well complied with. The tree issue is the only one that there's some rub on. But we had some issues regarding traffic, some issues regarding the profile of the development, some issues regarding Pringle Creek, those sort of things.
Right.
And the hospital has been a good neighbor as far as those things go. But, you know,
but at least there's the conversation going on with them.
Yeah, and that's, you know, no place in city government, or as an example in national government, are you going to get any place when all you're doing is butting heads and clashing, or in case of national government, when one party's trying to do something and the other party is all they're doing is stonewalling. The way you get things done is to meet with people and talk and you know, come to some agreement that,
or at least find out what you can agree on.
Exactly.
And then you can work on the things you don't agree on.
Yeah,
but you have to be willing to do that. And see, I think a lot of times people talk about, well, we need to get this or that. But the thing is that you need to work those things out. It can't always be one way or the other.
No.
And you have to compromise, but that's part of governing.
Well, of course it is. Of course it is. You know, and I'm going to be facing that on the council when I take office in January. And I'd like to invite everybody who's listening to come down. It's January 12th at 6:30. There'll be a swearing in at the City Council chambers of the 3 other council members who were elected, and of me. And let's pack the council and bring people down there.
One of the things that I've noticed at City Council meeting is that sometimes there's kind of some, what I term, disrespect for people to get up and testify in a way that the council doesn't like.
Yeah.
And I've just been kind of shocked by kind of the rudeness that I've seen. I don't know if it happens every meeting, because I don't get to go to all that that many meetings, but the ones that I have been to, and I've gone to a lot of city council meetings in my life, and this is the first time I've seen that kind of reaction to people testifying.
Well,
and so it bothers me, I guess.
I've been there too, Ken. I've been going,
Right.
Once I started to run, I went to them until I realized I wasn't getting any votes in the council, and then I'd go out and campaign. But since I've been elected, I've been going to every meeting except for one when we were out of the country. And what I've noticed is often that the council as a whole now, without singling anybody out, tends to offer more friendly and softball and conciliatory type questions to someone who's testifying in favor of what their position is.
Right.
There have been some meetings that I've gone to that the people who are in favor of a position that counselors support get a lot of questions asked to them, questions kind of designed to make their case a little more, and the people who are on the opposite side get no questions or get some kind of pointed questions. I will tell you though that all these issues have been they're pretty much hot button issues, and they're pretty emotional. So emotions, they can be on both sides,
Right.
but the council, they should be the adults in the room.
Yes, and I guess that was my point, that I wasn't seeing that. Because the fact of the matter is, if you're on the city council, school board, or whatever, and people are coming up and testifying, that's difficult for, I think, a lot of citizens to do.
Extremely.
So, you listen to them and you thank them for coming.
Yeah.
But, it's just an acknowledgement at that point.
Well, I've actually noticed in the past, few months, that I think that the whole tenor of the meetings has been has gotten better.
Okay.
And it was 4, 6, 8 months ago that was there were a lot of people concerned about that, and to the council's credit, I think they've been more more neutral in the way they approach things. And you should respect these people because you're exactly right. It's often difficult for them to do this. They're not used to that. It's something that affects them. They're often emotional about it because it's affecting them personally.
Right.
And recently there was an issue in the council about increasing the franchise fees for the garbage haulers, and also the wastewater sewage fees. And there were a lot of people there who it was a very emotional issue for them. People on fixed incomes who, even though generally speaking it's a small amount.
It is.
Yeah, but to them.
Well, you're on a limited income.
That's right.
It counts.
Small amounts are big amounts. And so they were rightfully so, and understandably so, they were emotional about things. And I thought in that case the council did a very good job, which is it's a hopeful sign.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because it did really concern me. I know at the very last council meeting I went to, I was very upset. And in fact, I tried to, there was a break, and a woman who had been testifying, I could tell she was really upset, and I tried to catch up to her. But she, and that's somebody I don't think is going to come back.
No.
And that is a shame.
And not only that, their view of how the city government operates is always going to be that way. And
they're going to tell their neighbors.
And they're going to tell their friends.
Yes.
And that was part of my campaign slogan: is we need leadership from the bottom up, not the top down. And that means listening to people who are at the bottom.
One of the other big kind of infrastructure issues is the police station. And the last thing I read seemed to indicate that they were widening the area that they would consider putting the police station in.
Yeah, they have.
Accurate?
And that actually is kind of encouraging to me. And I think just as in the Third Bridge situation, it's citizen involvement. People from the bottom up got involved in things, and there was a whole lot of the Salem Community Vision folks and the No Third Bridge folks and have made their points and have been out and have been participating, and I think that had something to do with the fact that there is now a blue ribbon commission appointed to look at it, and people of differing views are on that. Casey Aquilinan, who's member of City Watch, which is a active citizens group, she's on it. Jeffrey James, who is one of the leaders of Salem Community Vision and has, as an architect, and has done a lot of work in this area.
Well, with Courthouse Square?
Yeah, so I think that the mayor did a good job in broadening out. So there are also representatives there from the Chamber of Commerce and representatives from business groups, but it's a broader group than just a narrower one. And they've been down to, they've looked at the Kaiser police station, they've been down to Eugene to look at the police station, and you're right, they have, I think it's a 3-mile radius of the current city hall, so that gives a whole lot more sites to choose from, and there are other ways to do it. But I think everybody agrees we do need a new police station.
Right, that was never, I think, really an issue.
No.
Now, we only have like a couple of minutes left, so I was wondering, what issues are you looking at? We've discussed a few here, but are there some that you really think we need to be paying attention to?
I'm starting to do something on this. First thing is, I'm very interested in the honeybee population. And the scientists have isolated, I'm not a scientist, Ken, but scientists have determined that as a pesticide called neonicotinoids that are causing one of the main causes of the colony die-out. And in Salem and Marion County and in Polk County, not with the wine, because they're airborne pollinated as opposed to the other plants, the fruit, the truck farms, all this stuff here
rely on honeybees.
Rely on honeybees to pollinate, and I think there's something that the city might do. For example, I don't know this because I haven't, dug down deep enough into it, but I hope that we can get the city parks and the public works department to agree, through a resolution, say, to not use any neonics on the city property, and then we may be able to go a little farther. So that's kind of one thing that I'm interested to begin with. And I'll tell you the other thing that I'm kind of interested is how the city can cooperate and work with Salem Kaiser Transit District with chariots. It's
I would be glad to see that.
It's a crying shame that we don't have night bus service and weekend bus services. How can people of Salem who need to rely on the bus for their jobs, they can't work weekends, they can't work nights?
Well, especially in lieu of a third bridge, I think we could be putting those funds to that.
The transit district is a whole separate district with their own elected officials, but I've already been meeting with some of those people. In one of my past lives, I was on the Lane Transit District Board of Directors, so I think there's some expertise that I can bring here, and I think there's some ways that we ought to be able to cooperate more.
Well, Tom, I want to thank you for coming, and hopefully you'll get a chance to come back on a regular basis and keep us updated.
I'd be happy to. Let's make it a date, Ken.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tom. And this has been The Valley View with your host, Ken Adams, and come back next week for another show. Thank you.
Bye now.